Alrighty, go ahead
Okay.
and introduce yourself.
Okay. Hi. My name is Richard Haney. Also, my actual name is George. I only have a Twitter account. Um, I have a degree in military history from the University of Kent, and I have been a bit doom spiraling over the course of an entire week, looking at the situation in Ukraine. And well, a bit earlier than that, I had a few conversations with Rose Wrist, uh, doing more predictions and some coverage of the situation before the war had started. And I said, what was happening, what I thought would happen. I think people have been talking to me a bit more lately because I managed to predict correctly when the thing would start, when
Hey,
the war
there
would
we go.
start.
A fellow predictor of future events, I see.
Yeah, it usually it feels great to be able to predict stuff correctly, but not in this case because it was just predicting death and destruction instead of some good things. I've also spoken to Vosh. I had a pretty long segment about something irrelevant. We spoke about Golden Dawn, the Greek neo-Nazis, um, and their rise and fall. And after that, I've been kind of lingering in a few spaces of the online left. And now that something is happening, which is prominent and kind of within my preview and my expertise, closer to that, I can provide some more nuanced and more I don't know, valuable takes, I would say.
Well, yeah, you got me interested, and you got me here. So I'm actually I'm down to hear about this. I want to say right now, as we're speaking, I do have the live camera of Ukraine up right now. I don't have the audio on because I want to be able to hear you, and I want the chat to be able to hear you just fine. But should anything crazy happen, obviously I'll have to like very quickly acknowledge that or anything like that. If I assume you would want to as well, and you are welcome to comment on whatever may happen in the call with me as that happens. And I may keep you here for a little bit if anything should occur. Just want to give you a heads up because we are currently monitoring a live situation. I'm sure you understand.
No,
Probably,
yeah, I saw it a bit earlier in
yeah.
the live stream as well. It did sound like a like a lawnmower as well. I think the camera in Kiev
Yeah,
is sounding a bit grating, but it's
it's
okay.
there's just some ambient noise and whatnot. I mean, like the thing to me though is that like ambient grating noise is almost like music to my ears because it's not gunshots and it's not bombs and it's not
Well, yeah,
sirens, and like to me it's like that silence is probably a good thing. At least it is for here where the camera is, which is a
I mean, you
comforting thought,
caught
I
the air
suppose.
raid siren earlier, right?
Yeah, we
Uh,
were here for that, and it was quite chilling.
it is one of the worst sounds one can hear. The air raid siren.
I'm
It's
actually
almost.
I'm curious about that. Was that noise designed to like specifically hit like a weird part of our brains that sets off a primal fear that makes us want to run? Because like it feels like the cryptid, siren head is like one of the most effective like theoretical like fictional monsters, and he's like all about being a siren that puts off that noise that's really unsettling. Like there's got to be something about that sound that was specifically designed to curdle your blood.
Yeah, well, I'm not 100% sure on that. I think it has to be a mix between the sound being chilling, and we can make sounds that do sound unsettling, and the air raid sirens sure aren't soothing. And I think there's also the reputation that precedes it, because you know that an air raid siren means that bombs could fall,
Yeah.
and knowing that you live in an apartment, and depending on which part of the apartment you live, if if a missile strikes your building, you could be buried along with your entire belongings and livelihood,
Yeah.
which is not a thought that anyone should contemplate in the 21st century.
Something that I've had a tendency to do while watching all of this coverage is like, and this is something that's like made it started happening lately, probably mostly because I started smoking weed. It started happening since I started smoking weed. As I've started getting what I would argue is over empathetic with certain things. Like, well, I'll watch a movie and I'll start to put myself in the shoes of the people in that movie. Like, get really in my head about it. Like, you know,
So what you're
it
telling me
probably
is that you're an
sucks for
empath.
the it probably sucks for the people in The Walking Dead to have to shit. Like
Oh
there's
my!
no toilet paper. How do they do it? It can't be a pleasant experience. Like,
It probably isn't. That's why I think they aren't filming it all that much.
well, that's
Keep in
not a
mind, no running water
yeah,
either.
they leave that up to the viewer's imagination, and my imagination runs wild. Just generally thinking about situations, and I'll be watching this footage, and it'll be
Mhm.
like, imagine sitting on your balcony, where I have no doubt this live camera is situated, and just looking out at the city that you live in, knowing that your country is being invaded by a world superpower, and that, you know,
Yeah.
God forbid, in some cases, there's a channel we've been following called What is Ukraine? And she's, you know, just a YouTuber who mostly did like Ukraine. Look how pretty it is. You know, here's some like travel blog type stuff. Only I live in Ukraine, but so it's more of like a here's my home type deal. You know, we've
I
been
see.
following that channel, and she's very quickly gone from uploading what is just these wholesome, beautiful travel blog type videos that you could see, you know, on any given YouTube channel to what might as well be like scenes from like a war movie, you know? Like I'm in a bunker right now. I'm terrified for my life. My husband is out fighting to defend our country. I really hope I get to see him again. Our daughter is here, and let's hope, you know, that she's not going to be made fatherless by this. Like, it's just
Yeah, I think it
it's
feels
really
real.
distressing stuff, and it's really hard not to like imagine, God, can
Yeah.
you, what would it be like to be her, you know, or be any
Yeah,
of
I
those
think
people?
it's when it bleeds into, more of our popular culture, when we see a war. We were watching, say, a vlogger from Ukraine doing this stuff. I don't know if you know this travel channel, Baldwin Bankrupt. He's really famous. He goes around former Soviet republics and Russia mainly, and he said, "Oh yeah, we were in Kiev, right before the invasion started," and he was documenting, and he had to run along with the refugee train. I think when it bleeds into stuff we would watch normally, it the war reaches us in a different sense than most wars do.
You get a different
Say,
perspective, right?
movies. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like it's very much like when a family member dies, you know, death is like a concept you don't think about much, but then, you know, it hits somebody close to you, or it
Mm,
hits, you know,
yeah.
and then it's like, oh, you know, you're reminded just how much it sucks. War is very similar. You don't really think about war very much because, if we're being honest, we haven't had many countries that have very good internet access, and, you know, ready, like, very common access to iPhones and you know, recording stuff and all that, to publish onto the internet. There's been videos, you know, I've seen videos on Twitter from like Afghanistan of like the Taliban executing Afghan soldiers that were surrendering and stuff like that. That happens, but it's like never before has there been a war with the proliferation of live cameras like what I'm looking at right now on my screen, that just show what's happening, live monitoring like battles and wars and stuff, and what's happening in this war, really is something
It is.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is so different to, the wars I'm used to talking I'm used to talking about, because I studied a lot of, insurgencies and counterinsurgencies, that, most of the information comes to us, military historians, comes through documents from, ministries of defense and
Yeah.
foreign affairs. We aren't, as used to seeing that much footage. And, with World War II footage, even, you see a lot. You see a lot of scenes that you've seen again and again. Most of it is recorded by the Germans, uh, and it is, of course, it's interesting. But seeing, as time goes on, we'll see more and more wars that are, you know, broadcasted live. If Because I don't think wars will cease to exist. I think
Yeah.
they'll be a thing. for a long time to come. And this war in Ukraine is something really new. It breaks up the technically the long peace in Europe, even though we've had other wars
Yeah.
in the continent. We're talking about the two largest countries in Europe going at it,
Mhm.
uh, and it is quite a bit different. I think it will also bring a shift in the politics of Europe and the world. This will have huge repercussions. But my main thing has been focusing on mostly the military side of the deal, how the war is progressing, what I think is happening, and I think my main expertise falls on that side as well.
Okay, yeah. I'm absolutely down to hear what you have to talk about. My first question, unless you had like a planned thing you wanted to go through, if you're down for me to give
Oh, I
questions, all right?
I didn't. I didn't even think you would bring me on this fast, if I'm honest with you.
Huh.
But yeah, no, because I've spoken for quite a while about it. I spoke with Merrick, I think, for 3.5 hours yesterday about this
Mhm.
on her live stream. So it's fresh in my mind. So I have a few things to talk about. So the main thing that we've seen, especially on our side of Twitter, is that people are extremely optimistic, which is a good thing.
Mhm.
We've seen a lot of videos of Russian soldiers being confused and not having really low morale. We've seen tons of Russian equipment being abandoned in the sides of the road, and an invasion that has been relatively bungled in its early in its early days.
Mhm.
Um, I think we all had a dread when before this war had really started, that the Russians would just blitzkrieg and destroy everything in the first day
That
or
was
something
that
like
was a
that.
concern of mine, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
but I thought that idea to be unrealistic from the beginning, and unfortunately, I think that our extreme positivity about the whole situation is a bit misplaced still at the moment. And the main reason is, I don't. How do I describe it? Have you seen at all on our side of Twitter videos of Ukrainian military equipment being destroyed?
That's what I was about to say. There is so much of a filtering bias on so many levels for what we're seeing. We're almost exclusively being fed like hype stuff, like, oh, look how many Russian, yeah, right. And I have not heard anything, basically anything except for like a couple of graphics that showed like, yeah, there's also this many, Ukrainians have died, but look how many Russian tanks we've taken out. And it's like, okay, well, cool. But yeah, I have not heard much on the lefty side of Twitter about that. But what makes me curious is that selective like posting, or is that even like, is just Ukraine doing a really good job of hiding their fatalities? That's what I'm
I
curious
think
about.
it's I think it's kind of mixed, because the Russians have definitely given the information war to Ukraine, and that's part of why part of their reason for part of the reason for this is that the Russians were supposedly doing a peace operation, like in the Donbass. So they're trying to avoid that their media being oversaturated with the war at home,
Hmm.
because Russia doesn't look good doing this war. Not for their military failures, but for the fact that they're causing civilian casualties in a population that the Russians find extremely sympathetic.
Yeah, they
Uh,
they think that they're Russians, like well, sort of. They think that they ought to be part of
yeah,
the Russian Empire, you
they
could say.
consider themselves to be brothers,
Yeah.
brother populations. So the Russians don't want to see Ukrainian children dying. So
Mhm.
the Russians are keeping quiet on the information for generally, and of course we have selection bias. We're on the side of Ukraine, so we want to see them succeed. But at the same time, it feels to me ill-advised to take, for example, what the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, saying 5,000 Russian casualties, 200 tanks. It, it is too much. I mostly when I try to figure out how casualties are going, I try to use mostly U.S. sources because they seem to be a bit more accurate. The Russian Ministry of Defense, for example, says that only 500 Russian soldiers have died, and they have only lost maybe 10 or 20 tanks. So I think the number is really somewhere in the middle, maybe 1,500. Um, but the the whole situation, it seems like we are selecting for positive information, which is fine. I understand why we're doing that, but I want to explain how this why the Russians have been underperforming these early days of the invasion, and what could happen as the days go on.
Mhm.
Because keep in mind, we're talking about a massive war. This isn't a war that's going to be resolved in a week or two. This is a war that might take months or even years. So
Years, you think? Like the constant like sieges and attacks for years? You think that like Russia or Ukraine can handle that for such a prolonged period of time?
I'm not, I don't know what might happen, but if the success, quote unquote, condition, in my opinion, for Ukraine would be drawing Russia into a prolonged military conflict. I don't think there are going to be as many, active, if the war is going to, stretch into years. It's not going to be as much of, live firing rockets and tanks meeting on the battlefield. It will mostly
It
be
can't be,
an
yeah.
insurgency.
Yeah.
If or there might be an eastern part of the country where the government is still holding out and the Russians have stopped advancing. You know how wars devolve into more static engagements, especially in the 21st century. You've seen the war in Syria,
Hmm. Oh
started
yeah.
in what, 2014, 15, and it's still going on, and the country is basically divided into many areas. So
And we
it
just got
could
out of
it could
Afghanistan,
become,
you know?
yeah, it could become a frozen conflict. So we don't know how this will develop. And even if it isn't, if it is to last a few months, we have a lot of time ahead of us. So I've been watching all these good news, on left Twitter, and it has been driving my anxiety up the wall.
Because make
It
you
has
wonder, what am I not seeing, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I see the other side a bit more. I follow certain, military analysts who have a bit of a more balanced view, of course, but it makes me anxious because it's like watching all the good news before something really, really terrible happens.
Yeah.
Because I also have a bit of perspective because I know a bit more about previous wars that Russia engaged in after the fall of the Soviet Union. And so far, at least until the past day or two, the Russians seemed to have been a bit light on civilian casualties, which sounds crazy. They've bombed cities, but it can get so much worse. So I think it would be good if I was to explain a bit what the Russians went in with, what they were planning to do initially, and
Hmm.
what they're gonna do now. Um, yeah, do you want to go over that?
Yeah. Sounds absolutely great. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the initial stages of this invasion took place with only a fraction of the Russian troops that were deployed. Those 200,000 that we were talking about. Only
Hmm.
around 60 or 70,000 actually went into Ukraine in the early days of the operation. They also did not use heavy artillery and they only lightly used their ballistic missiles and multiple rocket launch systems. The poor morale of the Russian troops cannot only be explained by the fact that they're going into Ukraine, a country which they weren't planning on attacking, which they don't see as an enemy. It can also be explained by the fact that it is pretty widely recognized now that nobody outside of Putin's inner circle actually knew that this was going to be a military operation. It was kept secret, and apparently it was also kept secret from the soldiers and low-ranking members of
Yeah,
the
it
military.
seems that way.
Yeah,
I
which
saw it.
means that a lot of unit commanders hadn't actually prepared their troops for that invasion, and their logistics seemed a bit shoddy, especially in the earlier days of the conflict. So that explains the low morale and a lot of the abandoned military hardware that we saw. But at the same time, and also, part of their operation of, hoping that the Ukrainians would fold if Russian forces reach a few of their cities, and if they deploy the paratroopers to take over, say Hostomel Airport and then move down to Kiev to take the country. I think that was extremely overly optimistic on the side of the Russians. Of course, 500 or 1,000 paratroopers weren't going to take over a city of 3 million people. That was completely unrealistic. And that what makes me think, that those who said in the beginning that, Kiev would fall in one day. I thought Kiev would last at least a week, if not 2 or 3. And the reason why, I mean, very, very quickly, the first reason, all right, heavy mechanized units don't actually move that fast. Maybe they can cover 40, 50 kilometers in a day. Uh, what would that be in imperial units?
Yeah, but even
Maybe
that though, I mean,
30
like
miles. Yeah,
that's a decent amount. I mean, the
it
issue
is.
is like you also have to consider that it's that on top of what's getting in the way. Like a
Yeah, of
lot of
course.
stuff can get in the
And
way of
yeah,
mechanized units, anything armored, anything heavy and big and bulky. Like we
mhm.
have to consider turns
Road.
having to be slowed down for. You have to consider getting around obstacles. Hell,
Yeah,
the
blown
Ukrainians are
bridges.
bombing up bridges and fucking
Yeah,
up the roads and stuff. Or hell, what happens if one of the tanks up in the front or an armored vehicle up in the front gets hit with a javelin missile? Everyone's got to go around it.
yes. So thinking, that the Russians were going to take Kiev in a day seems, insane to me.
They wouldn't get
The
there in a day.
Yeah, of course, they wouldn't get there in a day. It's more than 100 kilometers away from the front. But it seems that in the early days of the conflict, the Russians did actually manage to advance the kilometers they were expected to advance by analysts. They did cover 40 or even 50 kilometers in some times, where we saw those funny videos of the Russians being out of fuel, and we were all laughing, oh wow, look at the Russians, competent running out of fuel. I was a bit more worried when watching those videos, because it suggested to me that they outran their supply line, that they had advanced so far in certain positions that they had outran their initial supply lines, and they were waiting to be refueled by the refueling units. Of course, their rear echelon security has also been a bit poor, but that also goes to show that the Russians haven't really been willing to just outright murder the civilian population. We've seen all those videos of Ukrainians going in front of tanks and blocking their way, and the Russians don't seem to want to just open fire at them.
Hmm.
But I think that as difficulties mount for the Russian invaders, they're gonna start mistreating the civilian population more. They're going to start shooting. They're going to start driving over civilians, and they're going to start using their traditional Russian methods of attacking cities. Um, Stuff like, for example, what they did in Chechnya during the first and second Chechen wars, because what the Russians had done there really does mirror a lot of what we saw take place in these first early days. They sent in their mechanized units initially. They reached Grozny, and those units were decimated by mostly Chechen warriors that were sitting on top of buildings, firing RPGs and other and Molotov cocktails and whatever else they had on poorly motivated Russian conscripts. And also the public opinion in Russia was against the war then. And well, what happened is that those units withdrew out of the cities. the Chechens were really happy. They declared victory over in the first battles of Grozny. And then what happened is the Russians dug in and turned Grozny into creep with a massive bombardment of conventional artillery, multiple rocket systems, and ballistic missiles, along with the Russian Air Force. The Russian army goes in, and what it has done in the past is turn cities into rubble, because they have just that much conventional artillery, which they have underused so far,
I will
as
admit,
they have done with their artillery.
I
With
agree.
their Air Force.
I feel like when I imagine Russian military, I'm imagining just almost like hordes, seas of tanks coming over the horizon, right? Just like worst nightmare, like holy fuck, put on your brown pants because we got to cover up the shit. Like that scary is how I've always sort of pictured it. And I'll admit that like, and granted, you said before there's like the bias and everything, but yeah, I've been somewhat unimpressed with Russia's performance in this so far, which obviously, at least before this convoy, I probably would consider a good thing. But now, if it concerns you, it also kind of concerns me that we're getting fed mostly positive information, because I don't feel like there's any way this could be going as well for Ukraine as it seems like it's going.
So the Ukrainians have suffered quite a bit. Mainly their infrastructure and military installations, the more stable stuff, has been pretty heavily bombed. It seems that like a lot of army headquarters have also been damaged, and their internet is now wavering. And of course, there's also a lot of damaged military hardware, like a lot of their older T-64 tanks that were upgraded as time went on. A lot of those have been damaged, a lot of their armored personnel carriers, but the Ukrainians are still holding. If my main concern now, as time goes on, is that the Russians will switch to bombing heavily, all the towns that they have surrounded. Because we've also heard that, hey, like none of the provincial capitals have fallen to the Russians, which is correct. They haven't, but the Russians have surrounded a lot of them.
And they've taken what it seems like is they've mobilized and taken a lot of small towns that really don't have much presence in them.
I mean, they've also taken Kherson in the south, and they've surrounded Mariupol. So that also is going on. Especially the attack from the south seems to be going better than the rest of the attacks into the country. I think that the Russians will try to move in to surround Kiev in the following days. But my main concern isn't Kiev, actually. It is what the attack from the south is going to do, because the armies that are the Ukrainian armies that are facing the Russian separatists in the Donbass, that's where the bulk of the Ukrainian army is. And those armies can only be supplied through a couple of directions. Well, before the war started, they had the direction of the south, then over the bridges in the Dnieper, which was in Zaporozhye and in Dnipropetrovsk. And then from the north, convoys could pass through the roads that are around Kharkiv and move south. But the roads in the north are being threatened by the battles in Kharkiv, which are pretty intense at the moment. And the roads in the south have been cut. So the roads that are left at the moment to supply that army are the ones that are moving through Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporozhye. And now the Russians are maybe 30, 40 kilometers from Zaporozhye? To me, the main concern is that the Russians might try to thrust north and cut off the Ukrainian forces that are facing the Donbass. And if that happens, that could be a pretty big issue. It could those forces would have to get supplied somehow, would have to be fed somehow. They would need more water, and if they're cut off, they might have to either fight their way out or they might have to surrender. and that would be a devastating blow to Ukraine's defenses. So that's my main concern in the coming days. What the Russians will try to do, and of course the bombing of civilian targets, because we've seen them start using those thermobaric bombs.
Thermobaric
We've
missiles,
also
yeah.
yeah. We've also seen them use their grads against civilian targets more, especially in Kharkiv, and we've also seen them um, we've also seen them use their either newer bombers, more the Su-35s. We've seen the Russians use them way more in these days, and they've also moved in reinforcements. Out of those, the big convoy that we've been talking about the past couple of days, those guys only went in to the fighting when the initial attack with the lighter forces failed, and that's how I think the situation will develop in the coming days.
So something I actually had an interest in asking you, because I've seen a lot of this and it's a little bit I guess it's a little bit worrying, is so these live camera feeds, things are really quiet right now, right? We're seeing a lot of
Yes.
quietness, and yet then we hear reports of explosions heard in Kiev. So like what I guess I'm curious about is, from your perspective, how accurate are these camera feeds? Like, are they a good thing to go off of in terms of like, sounds like there's fighting to the east on the camera? Like, because we didn't hear anything, and Kiev isn't necessarily that big. Like, if there were gunshots and explosions happening, you'd think you'd hear them, right?
Kiev is pretty big. It is a city of around 3 million inhabitants.
That's
It,
true. Yeah, a lot of ambient
it
noise to
yeah,
yeah.
but that's the oh, sure, European cities are a bit more dense than American cities, so I couldn't, provide a good example. You guys seem to build your houses in the area that we
Yeah.
would house 50 people. You house like three, but
Yeah.
either way,
Well, we got a lot of land, so we can do that.
yes, you can expand indefinitely. It seems like
We barely even
the emptiest country
we
on
barely even
earth.
touched we barely even touched the bottom left part of America. Like the part
Yeah,
that of America that when you look on a map it looks sandy. We barely touched that shit.
yeah, or the Rockies, or a lot of other places
Oh
that
yeah.
are pretty empty. The quote unquote flyover states.
Mhm.
But no, I think that looking at live cams is, well, I can't tell you the value. You could catch a lot of sirens, um, definitely. Now in the cities that I think there is a lot of fighting right now. Do you have any of those cities up?
Yes.
Because right
So
now the
oh, sorry.
heaviest fighting is taking place in Kharkiv, in Mariupol, and I think soon it will also be Konotop that that
Um
uh, that takes a lot of fighting. Yeah.
yeah, so what we have is Kiev trying to remember the name. It's not in English, so I can't read it
Well,
like how it sounds in English or how it sounds when said.
Kahovka.
Yeah, I think it's
Okay.
Kahovka, yeah. And then another Kiev cam, a Lviv panoramic camera, another Kiev
Mhm.
cam, a Chernobyl camera, and then another Nova Kakovka camera. Those are the only ones
Yeah.
that are really like on YouTube right now that I've been able to find.
Yeah. I mean, for example, in Lviv, you won't see any fighting.
Oh yeah,
Lviv
that's
is on
been
on
quiet.
the
Yeah,
yeah, on the eastern part. Chernobyl camp seems to be pointing at the sky with snow, and it's already
yeah,
occupied, so you won't see any fighting there. One the and out of your camps in Kiev, I think there's one in Freedom Square.
yeah.
Um,
Bottom left.
yeah, yeah. So I think that sure, you can have yeah. I think Mathaldo is saying that Kharkiv doesn't have webcams. The issue is that if when fighting gets worse, a lot of webcams will go offline, especially because as time goes on,
Yeah,
internet infrastructure is damaged, and so
power.
are a lot of cameras, and power can go out in a lot of places. So you won't catch any heavy fighting on cameras. And in my opinion, if you want to find out if there's heavy fighting in a city, I don't think the Russians will assault them directly anymore, because that failed in the early stages of the war. So I think they're going to start encircling and bombarding them. So you could try to follow some military analysts where they're going to be posting shorter videos of fighting or Russian troops within towns. I don't think the live cams will provide you with that much information. They're
Yeah,
more
that's
sensational, but yeah.
that is a good point. That's what concerns me, is that once stuff actually like happens, which we don't want to happen, then the
Mm.
cameras are just going to go out, and then like all you really have to prove what's happened is, videos of people from Twitter, and that's
Yeah.
good, but it's ideal if you can have people covering what's happening live, and like have that live world reaction of holy fuck, look what
Mm.
Russia is doing, this is horrible, this is terrible, like there's a lot of value in that, I feel like.
Yeah, no, there is a lot of value. It's something new. Seeing a war playing out live. Um, yeah, something, for example, to keep in mind. I think it was over the day to day. An encircled town in the north of Ukraine, Konotop. The Russians gave an ultimatum to the mayor of the town,
Mm-hmm.
and the ultimatum was pretty simple: surrender the town, which is encircled, or face massive bombardment. And the mayor of Konotop refused to surrender the town. So I don't think there's going to be a live cam from Konotop, but we're definitely going to see videos of people filming some kind of massive bombardment,
Mm-hmm.
because I expect that to happen, and I'm dreading to see what the Russians might do to that little town.
Yeah.
And I think also the next big target, because in the south, out of the big southern cities, um, some of the bigger ones are still in Ukrainian hands, but the next really big one that I expect to fall is going to be Mariupol. Uh,
Really.
yeah, because I think it's surrounded at the moment, and Kherson has fell after quite a bit of heavy fighting. There's the other two big southern towns, Mykolaiv and Odessa, are much safer. They're better defensive positions, and I think they're going to hold out for way longer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's also Melitopol, which fell, I think, a couple of days ago, which is a kind of big city, which was in a pretty indefensible area. It was in the middle of the steppe, essentially, uh, in the middle of the fields. There wasn't really a good
Yeah, it's
defensive
just
position
roll
there.
up on it, they couldn't do
Yeah,
anything. Yeah.
it got surrounded and it fell. So right now, quite yeah, Mathalto says, I think U.S. observers said Kherson is still contested. Yes, it is still contested. Of course, there's still probably irregulars fighting in there. I don't know if there's any Ukrainian army still fighting in there. It could be the case. But right now, the Russians do have de facto control over the town, um, from what I understand. Uh, of
What's
course,
life like?
I
Oh, sorry.
yeah, of course, I think you know, of course, we're gonna see irregular fighting in a lot in those contested or surrounded or Russian-controlled towns, and especially, for example, in Melitopol, we saw protests take place from Ukrainians. Um, I expect this to happen. It's just that as time goes on, that resistance will probably wear down, and the reason for that is, all those soldiers and irregulars that are fighting in there have to be fed somehow, and doing that in cities is always a problem, especially when the Russians seem to be underfed themselves.
Yeah,
They
that's something
seem
I've
to be
noticed.
going around in supermarkets trying to take food.
Yeah, the that's seems like a problem. Like what I'm seeing a
Mhm.
lot of, and this also is a little concerning, is we're seeing a lot of very positive videos of how Russian, POWs are being treated. And I really hope that's reflective of the broader trend and not just, some selective publishing or whatever. It doesn't seem like it is, but let's really hope that's the case. That's not the case. But what I'm really worried about is like when you see someone captured who's a Russian, they're being given like tea and they're being warmed up and they're in like the warmth and everything. But like when you're in the invading force, if you even are taking prisoners, like I don't know if Ukrainian prisoners are getting treated anywhere nearly as fair.
Um, Probably they probably are treated a bit worse, but prisoners of war generally are not treated as poorly nowadays as they used to. And of course, well, Russians, and going back to Soviet times, during the Second World War,
Oh, it
Soviet
also.
POWs were
Oh,
treated horribly.
oh, sorry, I didn't mean to like
No,
interrupt,
of course.
but
Yeah, yeah.
also I should mention it doesn't even necessarily need to be like oh they're treating them badly. It's very possible it's just oh the Russians don't have like they don't have enough food, they don't have the blankets and the heat and what they need to not only support their troops as it seems is kind of going on right now. There's been supply shortages, which as you said could just be because the invasion is going so much faster than
Yeah. I'm
the
actually
supply.
not 100% sure what is happening with Ukrainian POWs, but I don't think they have to keep them in Ukraine.
That's true. Yeah.
They can probably ship them to Russia, where they can feed them and shelter them fairly easily. Now I don't know if they're treated properly, but generally POWs are still kind of respected, and you tend to not treat them too poorly. It's not good to do that. That's why I've also, like, humiliating POWs is not, in my opinion, a very good idea. Even if they're the invaders, treat them okay, because you could see retaliation against Ukrainian POWs. That's the main reason why POWs are usually not harmed by.
Because yeah, what happens to your country's
Yeah,
POWs if you start fucking up
exactly.
theirs? Yeah,
Yeah, and during World War II, because there weren't that many German POWs in the beginning, the
the
the Germans
Germans weren't too
did
friendly.
treat. They weren't too friendly. They
Yeah.
left Soviet POWs. They committed them to hard labor. A lot of them starved to death. Especially other POWs in certain areas of the east, where essentially, I think some 2 million and something Soviet POWs during World War II outright died at the hands of the Germans, and then the Soviets retaliated by treating German POWs pretty harshly. But of course, yeah, just treat POWs like well. It's not a good idea to mistreat POWs, because of course there's retaliation. Of course, a lot of these soldiers don't really have a choice in going in, so do keep that in mind.
I
We're
treat all
talking
my
about concrete
POWs
armies.
quite
Yeah,
well, I'll have you know.
yeah. I don't know about your dungeon POWs in your home, Xander Hall.
My POWs on my screen right now, they're being treated quite well.
That's good to hear, because I don't think it's great, and I've also seen a lot of discussion going around about the Azov battalion using.
Yes, I want to hear about the Azov Battalion. Please give me the lowdown. I feel like it's got to be a meme. I feel like it's tankies over like using. Well, lefties hate Nazis, so what if we say the Ukrainians are Nazis? Then we'll have support for Russia. Like I feel like that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, in that sense, sure. I mean, when you're fighting a desperate war, especially when the Ukrainian military was weaker in 2014, when a militia comes up to you and says we're willing to fight your invaders, or you're not going to say no, and you're not going to ask them any questions.
Yeah.
Of course, it is regrettable that you have a Nazi unit fighting alongside the Ukrainian military, but it's not reflective of the entire force. We're talking about a unit of 600 soldiers in an army of 200 and some thousand, and in a country of 44 million, where far-right parties have only won 2% of the vote in the last election. It is completely inconsequential. So focusing on the Azov battalion would be like Turkey invading Greece and saying, "Oh yeah, you have neo-Nazis. I don't think the West would accept that, and I think it's right that
I don't
they
think they
don't.
should. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I'm glad that for the most part the Azov Battalion narrative is being combated by people on the left, but like fuck, people fall for that shit. It's effective. All you have to do is invoke, stuff like that to get a lot of lefties on the internet on your side with something like this, and it's upsetting because it's so bad.
It is. It's sad that we go ahead and fall for things like this very easily. I mean, another thing that's really big on the left is disliking NATO. So
Yeah. Oh, that's
a lot
like
of
a
people,
lot of dumb shit. I've seen that.
yeah, a lot of people instinctively think, okay, NATO is bad, so how is NATO at fault for this? And that's not a good way to analyze things because you're going in motivated. There are other bad actors apart from NATO, I'll have you know, in the world stage.
Oh yeah.
It's not just NATO that is bad. The Russians are pretty terrible, and what they're doing right now in Ukraine has very little to do with NATO and its aspirations. So, we do fall in a lot of ideological traps, in my opinion. But I think the Azov Battalion one is really silly. I think you can hate the Azov Battalion for being Nazis while not thinking that the Russian invasion that is killing school children and bombing nurseries at the moment is just a justified response to that. I don't know
Nothing.
how many I don't know how many Azov Battalion members are hiding in nurseries, but I can't imagine there's that many.
Yeah. One thing Okay. We gotta ask another question. This is gonna be a tough one.
Of course.
What is your opinion on the possible Russia cutting off our ability to access some of their stuff? Like obviously we're putting sanctions on them. What happens? Do you think we're gonna get some retaliation in that respect? Economic retaliation?
Economic retaliation from Russia would most likely hurt the European Union,
It would
not really the United States.
Well, yeah, that's the point. Is I'm asking like, do you think this would be possible, or do you think they're just gonna not even try because it wouldn't be, wouldn't have the effect, or do you think it's gonna be done just as a virtue signaling move to the Russian people because it could be popular? Like I don't know.
They could. I don't think it would have as much of an effect, but the sanctions being done against Russia now also hurt the European Union because gas prices are rising, and of course Russia is the main energy supplier of the European Union.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
natural gas and Russian oil account for a really big chunk of that energy that goes into the EU. So, and not only that, I think one of the bigger even issues that are being caused by this war is the fact that I think between Russia and Ukraine, those two supply 29% of the world's wheat.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
29%.
Yes. So food prices are also
That is not an and food prices are already high, and that is not an inconsequential percentage by any means, chat. 29%.
We're talking about the bread baskets of the world at the moment.
Yeah.
Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine
literally,
especially.
yeah.
So
that is their flag.
It's
It's blue sky and gold
and
grain, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's pretty.
So, yeah. So that's my main worry when it comes to sanctions. And also, I don't think the Russian economy will collapse to the point where they won't be able to support their invasion, at least not at the moment. Because even though sanctions are also hurting that Russian war chest that people have been talking about, around half of that war chest is held in gold and in Chinese currencies.
Oh,
so
yeah.
that part we can't hurt with sanctions, like we can, for example, the pounds or the US dollars or the euros that constitute about half of that war chest. And that the war chest, it was smaller when in 2014 the Russians invaded Crimea, but they they learned some things about how to make it better as time went on. Of course, there's other things. The Russian economy has a very low debt, and it basically bloats its reserves instead of spending it on its population. So, unfortunately, I think that the Russians while they will be hurt by sanctions very heavily, and especially their population will be hurt. I think they can maintain a budget surplus as long as uh, they can sell the crude oil at more than $40 a barrel.
Mm-hmm.
And at the moment, oil is much more expensive than that,
Yeah.
and it's set to continue being expensive. So as oil prices rise, that helps the Russian economy, doesn't hurt it.
Yeah, it does. So
So yeah,
really interesting. I'm liking this conversation a lot because if I'm being honest with you, even in my favorite lefty spaces, and I'm taught this applies to you guys if you're watching, even in my favorite lefty spaces, they're echo chambers. Every political space to some degree acts as an echo chamber. The degree to which it acts as one is determined by how responsible the person running the platform is, but it's bizarre how filtered I find that some of my like information on these things has been, because everybody is like kind of a little bit biased, and it's nice talking to somebody who isn't like obviously isn't like just biased in the other direction, and that's why they're saying this, clearly is on like the same side
yeah,
as me, but has a perspective that isn't just clearly blinded by agreeing with me.
yeah.
Or
I think that like of course we want to avoid doomerism, right? So seeking out purposefully bad information is also not ideal.
I can't beat
I
this
think
boss until I
yeah.
take a break.
Oh,
Sorry, I had to say something in my chat. Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to beat this boss until I've taken a break from the game, so I'm
yeah,
just
I've,
gonna chill for a
I've
minute.
seen you fighting. Anybody who said that playing the video games was a bad idea during this, it seems like a great idea because I have something to watch while this
Yeah,
goes on.
I'll give it one more try, but usually whenever I do a Souls fight like this, I get progressively worse, then I take a break, and then I beat it first try. So it's like,
Yeah. That's usually what happens. Not only with Souls bosses, but most boss fights. If it frustrates you, I think you should always take a break.
I leave before it frustrates me. 3 deaths, and I take a break, and then I beat it first try. It's always how it goes. It's
Yeah.
always been
So
the
for me,
rule.
if you're going to seek out information, do understand that, for example, Ukrainian sources are going to be really pro-Ukraine. So there's going to be exaggeration when it comes to the numbers of casualties caused to the Russians, and there's going to be an underreporting on the casualties caused to Ukrainians. And they're going to present the situation as them winning because that's what they have to do. It's
Yeah,
not, they're not at fault for doing this. But if we want, a more accurate understanding of what is really going on there, do avoid Russian sources because they are pretty
yes,
poor.
yeah,
Please. But my recommendation would be to look at like war analysts and certain uh, journalists on the ground. Those are gonna probably be better for understanding what's really going on. And another thing, please, don't let your preconceived biases about geopolitical actors and what they do cloud your judgment or color your entire analysis of an event. Because I've seen, a lot of people, saying, being conflicted, saying, well, NATO is horrible. How do we square this with the invasion of Ukraine? You can maintain that NATO is horrible. Please, for the love of Christ, don't you don't have to start liking the Russians because of it. You know. Yeah, I think that's my point there.
yeah. I've noticed that like this happens a lot. Anytime that you have to give the benefit of the doubt to a group that, let's be real, the left decides, you always have to say is bad, then it always leads to some, all right, yeah.
Yeah.
It always leads to some dumb shit. Afghanistan we saw, right? Like, I got mega canceled with the Afghanistan stuff because I said, listen, all right, let's look at the polling. Most women in Afghanistan don't want us to leave unless there are proper like peace talks agreed to where women are going to be able to work and go to school and everything. And I went on about how like the Taliban are going to probably take most of Afghanistan, probably at least take Kabul in like a week, I think I might have said. And I went into some pretty good detail, and I was mostly correct. But I got canceled for that take because it went
Yeah,
against like the popular
a lot of
narrative,
people were
even though it
angry.
was correct. And that happens all the time. There are plenty of absolutely true base takes that I'll like say off stream that I'm like, this is so true and fucking base, but I could never say this on stream because there's no way they could handle it. And it's true.
Yeah, yeah. I remember your take on Afghanistan. Being that the situation will get worse once the U.S. leaves.
Yeah, for the people of
And
Afghanistan, yeah.
I saw people. It was really bewildering when I saw people thinking that somehow if the Taliban takes over, things are going to be better. Of course, they weren't going to be better. Not only is the Taliban a way more brutal overlord than, say, the United States, there's also the fact that economic aid was always going to be harmed. And now, if I don't know if people have been following Afghanistan very closely, but they're on the edge of famine. The
Really?
population of Afghanistan right now is starving. I think the more than 50% is food insecure at the moment, and things are going to get much worse because the economy of Afghanistan was decimated by this war,
Yeah.
and also a big part of their economy was held in American banks, which are now withholding whatever aid they would provide to Afghanistan on the grounds that it's held by the Taliban. But I right now the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan is going to get much worse. So I don't get I understand the reflexive dislike um, of Western partners. I am not a big fan of U.S. intervention and what they've done in a lot of the Middle East and what their justifications are for a lot of things. I'm not a big fan, but at the same time, I can't just sit there and deny reality because I dislike America. Uh,
Exactly.
and I don't even have to even hand it to them. I can just say, well, what America does is bad in certain contexts, and so is what other autocratic countries might do,
Hmm?
or what other bad actors might do. Um, Being, a quote unquote anti-imperialist while standing Russia of all countries, for the love of God, do you know nothing about either IR politics or history? Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Listen, I'm going to be completely honest. When it comes to my qualifications and what I talk about, it's usually like I try to stay in my lane and make it obvious when I step out of it, and I'm giving like a grain of salt kind of take. But having somebody on that knows they're talking about, especially somebody who is not a subject of bias, or well, a subject of bias to the extent that I see so
Subject of
often.
bias.
A subject, well, yeah, like wouldn't you be a subject of biance if you were biased?
I have my own biases, but
Yeah, I mean, I
yeah.
guess I don't know that the terminology is weird, but
Yeah, and
any
of course, I wanna give a little disclaimer. I don't have insider information on this whole thing. I don't work in a defense in a defense analyst like haven or something. I'm not in a think tank, at least yet. I'm only 21 myself. I don't have some extremely insider knowledge. I just have some understanding of the situation that has been afforded to me by my studies, and I try to give a more measured take because I always fear that since we are in certain echo chambers, we can miss a lot of information that might come to bite us in the ass later.
yeah, yeah, I find that's happened a lot, and it happened with the Afghanistan thing. It's happened with a lot of non-war related things, just random
Mhm.
politics stuff, and yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you coming on because this has been a really cool convo. I definitely might have you on in the future if there's any other crazy like world events that occur or anything else unravels here. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
Um, Sure. I mean, at some point in the future, I mean, yeah, if another big world event happens, of course, even though I want to, I can't stop watching, which is something isn't great for my mental health.
Yeah.
But not only that, if you want to speak about past wars or world events that you might have limited information on, I can provide a lot of information. So if you want to do, for example, a segment on how terrible Stalin is, I can give you a lot of information there, because there seems to be a lot of people on the left seem to think, okay, Western propaganda is bad, therefore Stalin isn't as bad as they say, therefore Stalin is good. No, that's not the case. I can talk about Stalin if you like. I can talk to you about a lot of information on I can talk about the Greek Civil War, which a lot of people on the left know absolutely nothing about. So one of the big Cold War phenomena that the left knows anything about. I bet a lot of people haven't even heard of it. Uh, on here, a lot of people don't know that the United States has actually dropped napalm on Greek territory
Really?
during. Yes,
Shit.
yeah, one of the earliest Cold War engagements. I can talk to you about something that I think you'll really like. Do you know how about a lot of people on the left talk about revolutionary action in the United States and how they're gonna take to the mountains and become like and
A
start the revolution?
lot of stuff like
I
that, yeah.
have I have studied insurgencies and counterinsurgencies, and I can I can come in and uh, do a pretty thorough breakdown of how idiotic that idea is. Because a lot of people say, "Well, are you like anti-revolutionary?" No, I'm anti-stupid. Um, I want you to know that if you go out in the Appalachian Mountains to start your LARPy revolution, you will run out of food in a week, and then the American government will come and arrest you, with the rest of the American population consider you a terrorist, and the socialist cause in the United States being thrown back decades. That's what I think. So yeah, I can come and talk to you about a little bit of like how a revolution actually works, how the military aspect of like a revolution works, how the I can talk to you about the Cuban Revolution, for example, how that came about and how that happened. But I yeah, so I can talk to you about a lot of things. So if an idea comes to me, I could send you an email or something, or DM you,
Okay.
if you have a more chill stream or something that comes up. If you think that you want to talk about a historical event, you can have me on.
Yeah, absolutely. That should be a great time. I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me on, especially on such a short notice. I
Oh
did
no, of
enjoy
course.
our conversation, and yeah, to everybody else, thank you guys for having me, and stay positive, please. When looking at the news in Ukraine, do use a critical eye when looking at them, and keep your hopes up. It's good to be positive and support the Ukrainians. Slava Ukraine! Okay, everybody.
True.
Have a wonderful time. See you later.
See you later. Have a good one.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Bye. Glory to Ukraine. Hell yeah, that was a fun combo. Learned some cool stuff. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. That was really pog. All right. If you enjoyed that segment, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe, ring the bell icon over next to the subscription button if you haven't already, to turn on all notifications so that YouTube actually tells you when I go live or upload a new video. They don't do it otherwise. I swear, they don't. It's true. On top of that, of course, if you want to follow my social media, it's all linked right down below in both the description of the video and the stream. So you can follow my social media, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, fan Discord, all of that. And of course, if you want to support me financially, as this is still my full-time job, and I don't want to stream to you guys from the inside of a cardboard box, naked in the desert, covered in lizards, feel free to donate. You can either donate to a cause like the Ukrainian military, or you can donate to me if you want to support me. It's up to you. I will leave the option on the table, but you can either donate through my website, xanderhall.com/live, donate through Streamlabs, or through YouTube and I think Patreon. Yeah. Other than that, no matter how you support me, thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. and have a good one.